Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, September 24th, 2024 regular meeting of the Stoughton School Committee. This meeting is being recorded by SMAC for future broadcasting. Please rise if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on the agenda tonight is public comment, and seeing as no one has signed up, we're going to move on. The second item is the student advisory representative who has not yet arrived. Whenever they arrive, we'll jump to them. We'll move on to the superintendent update. Dr. Baeta.
Madam Chair, good evening, members of the committee and the public colleagues. A couple of things to note. I know in the near future we'll be talking a lot about MCAS results, and Mr. Ford, Ms. McDonough, and the team will be with you at some point. But I did want to announce this evening that the Stoughton High School was noted by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education as a school of recognition for student outcomes and accountability. Specifically, these schools that received this recognition demonstrated progress toward annual accountability targets with an emphasis on the performance of all students in the school and the school's lowest performing students group where applicable. We were one of 14 high schools in the Commonwealth recognized for this. The growth is pretty significant when you look at the data, and we'll be discussing further details of that with the full committee in the near future. But I think it's timely because of the work and efforts of Stoughton High School and all of the support that comes from administrators throughout the district and working as a team. But the idea of targeting chronic absenteeism and improving our lowest performing students' outcomes, I think, is something that we should be pretty proud of. So we'll be celebrating that with folks as well in the near future. Everything came out today, so I'm probably a little bit of a dud talking about it because everybody's talking about it, but I know that people are excited that we're being recognized for hard work, and that's a good thing. We are really looking at our elementary level issues because of student trauma and behavioral needs, considering a lot of different options on how to support the elementary schools, and I'll be sending you some information in the near future on some steps that we're going to try to take to do so. The modular classroom visits to other sites. We will start that process. I will be asking for a working committee from the school committee. I don't think I need a school committee member at this process, but at some point down the road, we'll make sure that we have that. Right now, we're looking at temporary or permanent. We're looking at leasing or purchasing. We have to keep in mind all of that. The difference between temporary and permanent, and I'll put this in writing to you in the near future. Temporary is spacious, well-lit, climate-controlled, ADA compliant, quick occupancy. Sometimes it only takes a few weeks to put them up, but it's temporary versus permanent, which they're built for long-term, designed to certain specifications and so on and so forth, tech, security, data options, furniture, no furniture, all of that becomes part of that. And I'm also meeting with just one company, tomorrow, Thursday, just for the purposes of gathering information. And then I get some calls into superintendents to go do site visits, just to go see what they're doing at the elementary level. So the modular classroom committee will be determined sometime in October as we take a look at what plan we have to take, which is multiple plans because of the building project. And I also just want to inform the committee, we've been tracking daily attendance. You'll start to see on our website an actual daily attendance, percentage of attendance of students. And in our first full, well, not even full 3 weeks, from the 4th to the 6th, we are ranging anywhere from a low of 94.6 in K-12 to a high of 98.2 in K-12. We are starting to see the preschool number drop, but that is very typical. That's hovering around 91%. But we are keeping track of attendance on a regular basis to make sure that we're targeting students coming to school. And our attendance committee will be probably presenting to you in the next month or so. We have some signage that we want to put out, things like attendance matters, attendance makes memories, which I think is a fantastic one because it's about the social emotional, not just the academic and being in school. and other type of scenarios. So you'll hear more about that in the coming weeks. That is all I have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for the superintendent? Lindsay?
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations to Ms. Miller and everybody at Stoughton High School. I think that is like very, very exciting progress. I'd be really interested if you could share more of the data around like what was the growth, what were the lower performing student groups, so that we can really dig into it, because I'm interested to see what we can grow there. Like what are the best practices we can build on?
We agree. We'll be back with some information for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Karen, we've just had the superintendent update and the announcement of the news of the MCAS recognition for Stoughton High School. Armando, any comments or questions?
I'd like to also know, when you have time, how the other schools did.
Yes, oh yeah, you'll get the comprehensive. We had some really good successes in some of our schools, and we have some challenges. The way I like to use the word, opportunities for growth. And we're going to be really taking a look at why we did so well in certain areas and not in other areas. So that would be Jonathan, the curriculum team, Diane, the Dunner, and the data team, and then goes down to the principal level, because we need to know from them as well.
Anything else? Yeah, I just want to add my congratulations to the Stoughton High School team, Ms. Miller, and the whole administrative team. Students, obviously, for their hard work, too, because they need to be recognized for that. This is great news, so good accomplishment. All right, if there's not anything else, we'll move on to the special education program update, and I'd like to introduce the special education director, Ed Clark.
Thank you very much. Good evening. We're off to a pretty good start to the year. I did provide you, obviously, with some updated program descriptions. But as I tend to do, I wanted to make sure I threw some legalese in there as well. You've got some IDEA and some state regulations, and then also descriptions of the disability categories in which we find students eligible for. It's a fluid document. Obviously, our population and the needs of our students are changing all the time. We're adding and subtracting programming based on their needs. A couple of the points I wanted to mention in that new program description is that we do have a new TLC classroom, which is opened up at the Wilkins to address the needs of our students who are on the autism spectrum. And there was a movement of one of our RISE classrooms from the DAW over to the Gibbons. So we have a true K through 5 program at one school to address the needs of those students. As you can see, I think by the descriptions of our programming, we have very robust and supportive program, especially, I believe, for our students on the autism spectrum. In relation to that population specifically, we've recently purchased new curriculum materials called Teach Now for our elementary ASD population. The teachers are going through some training now, just to make sure we have more of an emphasis and a focus on functional academics, as well as related services and social emotional growth that we're working on with those students. This year, we're going to be looking at and hopefully piloting curricula for our secondary TLC level as well. So again, we keep a full continuum of services in our mind as we look at programming. Just to throw some numbers at you real quick, we are starting off the year with approximately 745 students on IEPs. That calculates out to about 19.4% of our population. We ended last year right at 20%. Usually we see a little bit more of a dip at the beginning of the school year with students who graduate or move on. But this year we had approximately 12 to 15 move-ins with IEPs. So that dip wasn't as great as it usually is at the start of the year. Be that as it may, we're still a few tenths of a percentage point below the state average when it comes to students with IEPs at the end of the last school year. All right. Although we do have robust programming, we currently have 44 students placed out of district in either collaborative, public day, private day, or residential placements, and we have 3 pending referrals for placements at that time. That's below the district average over the past 5 years. The district has averaged anywhere from 55 to 60 students per year over the past, I want to say, half a dozen years. So we're seeing a decrease in the need to send students out, and I think that's direct correlation to the program that we have in district. Even though, as I said, we have a really robust program for our students on the spectrum, out of those 44 students who are actively placed out of district, 23 of those hold an ASD diagnosis. So it's a substantial need here in Stoughton that we are doing a better job of meeting, but I think we'll continue to look at our ability to educate those students within our walls and make those improvements as we move forward. Okay. Another change to programming this year is that we have, I guess the word is suspended, our LEAP program at the high school. Our LEAP program is the transition program that services our students between the ages of 18 and 22. We had a teacher who had been in that program for many years move on to another district, and we could not find or interview someone who we felt was qualified enough to service those students effectively. In the interim, we are utilizing 2 separate programs. We're using some transitional services through the Pilgrim Area Collaborative, as well as continuing our partnership through Macy, which is, and I wrote this down because it's an acronym I haven't memorized yet. It's a Massachusetts Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment Initiative. There are colleges throughout the state. We specifically deal with Massasoit Community College and UMass Boston, which offers the college experience to students who are in these transitional programs. What we used to call auditing classes at the college level, but giving them, the college experience and also giving them some good community-based / vocational skill opportunities. Any questions that said you went through that, or any questions about any of the programming that we have?
Armando?
What's the biggest challenge that you have this coming year?
The biggest challenge, which I always feel is the biggest challenge, is changing a student's LRE, or their least restrictive environment. Our goal as special educators, it's an old adage, but it's to put ourselves out of business. We want to make sure our students are as independent as possible the older they get. So, educating students in one of our substantially separate programs, helping them build the skills, build the independence so that they can be successful in supportive inclusion, then be successful in inclusion, and then hopefully continue moving that least restrictive environment down as their independence increases. That's the target that I always find, that's always the challenge that I'm focused on when it comes to special education.
Any new methods or approach?
I think that adopting a curriculum specific for this ASD population, I think we're going to see some good gains. And I think we'll do some, formative and summative assessments that'll show that, as we move through the year. And again, the staff or teachers are excited about it because they've got something that is targeted and focused on this population. And I think, as we continue to look through the year, the push to continue this up the ladder is going to become, quite evident and something that I'm going to promote.
Very good.
Lindsay, any question?
Yeah. So I think that's some exciting data here. I think, and I also want to say thank you for putting this doc together. I think it's helpful for us, but I think also since it's part of the packet and it's public, I think it's actually, there's just always questions from the public around when we get to town meeting, finance committee about special education, how it works, why it's so expensive. So I feel like some of this
It was created obviously by myself, the assistant directors, and also some other staff members.
Yeah.
And was proofread by the CPAC last year. Because I always
Okay.
like to have many eyes on something before we release it. So.
Yeah, so I think having this available is really
Yep.
great, just as an overview of what we offer and how we're meeting student needs. So thank you to everybody who was involved in that process. I think I'm really curious about the decrease in out-of-district placements. I think that feels exciting. And I know you said it's due to meeting student needs better in district. I'm curious if you can elaborate on that or just speak a little bit more to that and
just think
how much of it is student needs evolving versus like programming changing?
I think it's, we have highly qualified teachers in all of our programs. And we're seeing, even though we are seeing an increase in students with social emotional needs, they're not reaching the level that some of our other complex learners are at. And our programs, I think, are able to sustain these students within district. There were times in the past where if it had a student who was already on an IEP, who may have developed some type of social emotional or behavioral needs, instead of sending them out to a collaborative or another school for an evaluative period, we have the ability to do that in district.
That's great.
And I think that's big. The numbers have dropped because we did have, a handful of students age out or graduate. But I think it's the fact that, we're growing our programs and, not as many referrals are going out as have in the past.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you.
You're
I think I'm curious about the transition planning services too. Is that something, is this sort of a like temporary state until we're able to staff it up, or is it?
It is. It's
Okay.
almost like it came about by, happenstance, but it's one of those where instead of having to break the program down and build it
Yeah.
back up, we were able to find supports for this population of students, which met all of the needs in their IEPs. But by an established transitional program where we're going to visit, we're going to ask questions, we're going to steal, and bring back good ideas and rebuild this program to more of a community-based, independent, vocational skill-focused program, with the services that they need also attached. So
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I think this is good stuff.
I do have some other,
Okay.
Oh, we lost Karen. All right.
oh, okay.
Armando.
I just have a couple
Okay.
more
Oh, okay.
updates, but
Sure.
I wanted to give you a chance to ask about that.
Do you want to hold on to the updates till he's
I
finished? Okay.
just tried to go and she
Oh.
gave me an idea.
Okay.
Is it even possible, from my understanding, it costs more to send someone out than to educate here?
Mhm.
My question is it even possible at this point, or what do you see, or Dr. Bayam might be able to help me with this question? Do you see Stoughton ever getting to a point where we keep all of the students?
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Least restricted environment is always, as I said, is always the goal. And educating a student in their home school or neighborhood school is their right, and we do that to the best of our ability.
Is
So-
it, I'm just curious,
Yeah.
has that ever been achieved by any
I don't,
district, and can we ever achieve it?
I'm not sure because we're dealing with a lot of students with a lot of complex needs. Now, I've always said, whatever a student's need is, I can build a program for that student, but would that student be in a classroom of one
Oh.
because of their unique needs? That's how educational collaboratives were formed. We had, small schools or, who had one or two students with unique needs, and it wasn't fair to them, it wasn't cost-effective to educate them here, but if a bunch of towns banded together to build programs, we may have two students with similar needs, Canton may have two, Randolph have two, and that's how these collaboratives were formed.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, and it was, kept them local, kept them in public schools, and it kept the cost down for districts. That's how collaboratives came about. We do have, it would be a great goal as we rebuild this LEAP program, that we get it to the point where we can promote it as a destination for other towns looking for transitional services who may not have that population to build, and actually transition kids in. In my career, I've done that for a handful of students, where I've had strong programs in a small town I worked in, and, worked out a deal with a neighboring town to have their students attend. So it's not uncommon to do. It's a great goal, and it's something we're always looking at, so.
I guess I'll ask the same question. Is it possible to actually bring them in?
Bring students from other towns in?
Yes.
Yeah, there's ways to do it, and again, when a previous district of mine, we partnered with a town. It was actually a trade. I had a strong LC program at the elementary level. They had a strong language-based program, so no money had exchanged hands. We just you service, this kiddo who needs that specific type, will service this. But there are ways to do that, and I'd be willing to explore that, absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds like something Stoughton should do.
Yeah. I mean, the future definitely is a combination of the specialties that collaboratives have, growing your own programs to become competitive where other districts want to say to you, I have one student, your town is closer than the collaborative. And so it's cost effective, it's closer, it's better for the student. I mean, you're seeing a lot of that happen. My last district, we were doing that with 2 nearby communities. But remember that this process is a public school family decision, right? A lot of people believe that, and I think we've heard a little bit of this in the last year or two, that, there's, that, these students are here, because of our programming. Well, we should pat ourselves on the back for that, for being recognized that families want to live in town because of our great programs. But added to that is the idea that with that comes the opportunity, when we have space available, and that's a big question right now in our district, that if we started another program, that we could have a partnering district that calls and says, I have 2 students with the same unique circumstance, and so you might see a deal between the 2 communities where K to 5, they come to Stoughton, 6 to 12, they go to, and they're in public education the entire time, and with peers and so on and so forth. The other part, I think that's important, that comes with all of this, is a desire, at least always been my philosophy, that if we can do it and we can do it well, these students are on the baseball field and they're at the park with Stoughton residents, so why not Stoughton? At the same time, we have to balance that with students where the programming requires them to go out of district because of the specialty that we can't offer, or we don't even have the space for.
And that just reminded me of a point, is regardless of where we send students to be educated, whether it's here, a collaborative, or private school, they're Stoughton students.
Yes.
I'm going to end on a high note, but I'll get to that in a few minutes. But there are students who we have at other programs who are participating in some after-school activities in Stoughton because it's their right and it's something that we welcome. So,
Very good.
I just want to give you an update on something that's happening back last spring. We received notice that we are considered to be, the special ed department is in a needs assistance category under the DESE LEA determination formula. What they do is they take a look at 8 different data points, and they have a 1 to 4 rubric, and based on where they rank us, they give us a determination of being completely proficient, needing assistance, or needing intervention. Out of the 8 data points, again on this 1 to 4 rubric, 2 of our data points fell in it's either a 2 or a 1, okay, giving us this needs assistance label. The 2 areas are, we received a 2 in what it's, I can't remember the specific indicator. Basically, it's the gap between the proficiency of all of our students in MCAS compared to students with IEPs proficiency. The gap between those 2 numbers put us in that 2 category. The other area, which we were labeled a 1, again, I apologize, this is based on data from FY23, so 2 school years ago. We're given the 1 in the area of incidence of non-compliance. It's extremely high, which, again, I'm going to be getting some answers next month. And I believe it's high because it's directly related to the tiered focus monitoring audit, which I presented some data on this time last year, and you saw the final document where we're back up to compliance. And the reason why I think it's high is that they give you an average. It's how many incidents of non-compliance has DESE found per 1,000 students. This report says that there was 11.8 incidences per 1,000 students, which if my math is right, leads to there's going to be somewhere around 33 incidents of noncompliance in the FY23 school year. I think it's directly based on the digging they did through the TFM. And I think that because last year, we had 4 reports from DESI of noncompliance. That's less than 1 per 1,000. So the difference between 11.8 and less than 1, that's a huge gap. Myself and 2 of my assistant directors, Ms. Sampson and Ms. Sareva, are actually going to a DESI workshop in October to begin the work of looking at root cause analysis of why our MCAS scores are so low in FY23 compared to everyone, and also, again, take a look at these areas of noncompliance to build an action plan which we will submit to DESI and continue to report on until we get those levels up and we're no longer labeled as needs assistance. Before the meeting, Dr. Baeta and I were talking about those MCAS, and I'm hoping that the students with special needs, hopefully those scores are have bumped up like we're going to see some of the scores at the high school, and that gap won't be as big this year as it was back in FY23. But that'll be to be determined, and I'll be providing information as we go through this process to keep you up to date on that.
But, sorry, I have much. Sure. But if the high schools get bumped up, isn't that creating its gap?
I hope not, but it's a good possibility that they're going this way and we're staying, as students in special education are staying that way.
And so what you're going to see, I have them printed on my desk right now, all the scores. You're going to see the relative performance increase of special education mirror that of regular education.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't something where you see one aspect of the high school accelerating away from another. You just see about 10-point gains across the board everywhere. It's remarkable.
Wow, that's great.
It's exciting data. If
that's-
data can be exciting, yeah.
And that's part of the formula. The formula went after goes after and really bumps a lot of the points in that lowest performance area. So if you don't really move, you can be in real trouble too.
And going back to that other piece, do you think it's all timelines?
It's timelines plus also parent or however complaints through the PRS system, where whether we missed a timeline, whether, mostly timelines, because I'm thinking timelines for, getting IEPs out, timelines for evaluations, the areas where we were found to be partially compliant, during the big report.
And I think it's worth noting out that the components that came from the TFM were already addressed by the district.
Mm-hmm.
We already put in a corrective action plan. We've already followed through and solved the problem. So this really is a ripple from an issue that's already been addressed. It catches up to a year after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
How often do these ratings come out? Is this something that we'll see like resolved next year, or is it like every 2 years? I heard-
With the action, with the corrective action plan, we'll monitor these areas specifically as more data comes out. We'll find out whether, our actions have been successful, and if they're, haven't been or partially successful, it's something we'll continually look at and tweak to make sure we get back to an area where we're not have this label.
Yeah.
So,
Great. No, I know a lot of the work is already happening,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
thank you.
just 2 more things. The first CPAC meeting is this Thursday night. Excited about it. It was good to see an increase in attendance at the CPAC meetings, from previous years. We have some folks, some officers who are really committed to doing some work, not only just parent outreach around Child Find and bringing in more members, but also listening to parents and their needs and really helping me get information out to people. So if anybody is available, 6 o'clock on Thursday night up at Stoughton High School. And last but not least, I'm pleased to announce that our unified sports have started up again. And just a few minutes before the meeting, Ms. Lonergan at the high school texted me to let us know that our unified basketball team won their game against Oliver Ames earlier this afternoon. I got a great picture of them all, very, very happy. If you do have a chance and you would like to see something that makes you feel amazing and you'll leave smiling, There is a home game next Thursday. It is also Teacher Appreciation Night, where students get to bring their favorite teacher and bring them out on the court before the game. So,
Why don't we hear more of these events?
why don't we,
We're happy to put them on your calendar of events.
absolutely.
That would be wonderful.
I'll have Kathy, my calendar will be your calendar for all activity events. You can represent me at some of them. Yeah, I can make sure that the school committee has just the calendar of the activities, events, and all that stuff, and then you, whatever you can make, you make. You know, if you can go to one a year, that's a success story. Yeah, I'll make sure you get a calendar of events.
Yeah.
I've heard great things. I know several people have gone to the Unified Game, who have their kids are completely different ages, but they said it was a fantastic experience and
It's-
all the way around.
It was amazing that the first couple of basketball games next year, again, it was new last year, the amount of people in the crowd, the amount of students who stayed after school to watch, the cheerleaders, the dance team, members of the band. It's just a great feel-good game. So,
Very good.
it's awesome.
Sounds like a highlight to leave it on, unless anybody has any other questions. Unfortunately, I think we'll ask Karen again. No more questions.
And students from our transition program who are either down at Plymouth or involved at Macy at the Community College of UMass Boston, they played this afternoon.
Oh.
So these students are coming back, still involved in this great activity, so.
Very
Good
good.
to hear. Fantastic. Love it. All right, thank you very much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate all of your time.
Thank you.
Yes, again, thanks for this. Really, really helpful. All right, if we could move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the computer monitors and copiers. That's a misprint. That was your chair's error. That should be printers. Donation from Corona Therapeutics. We have a letter from Mr. Christopher Fernandez Nunez, a South School parent, offering to donate 15 34-inch monitors, 10 27-inch monitors, and 2 Xerox multifunction printers. Mr. Anthony Fippen, the Education Technology Supervisor, has recommended that we consider this donation of technology equipment from Corona Therapeutics. And as per school committee policy and state law, the school committee needs to review and accept these public gifts before expenditure or use. Any questions or comments about?
I take it we can use them.
We can definitely use them.
I think just want to extend some gratitude to the parent here. I think this is a really thoughtful way to show up for the school community, and just really appreciate that. I did see someone needs to retrieve the equipment.
Yes.
How would we handle that?
We have the trucks from our maintenance department that could go pick them up.
Okay.
And if it's something where we have to use a U-Haul, then we would just rent a U-Haul for the day.
Gotcha. Okay, then
All right.
should I?
Could I have a motion to accept the computer monitors and printers donation?
Go ahead.
So moved.
All right. That motion was made by Armando, second.
Second.
Second by Lindsay. It's been moved to second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unfortunately, Karen left, but that's carried 3-0. Again, thank you very much to Mr. Fernandez Nunez, and thank you to Corona Therapeutics. All right, the next item is FY26 budget planning. This is just a placeholder because this will be an ongoing thing for the next few months. At the next meeting, we're going to have the FY24 final report and the first quarterly report for the FY25 budget, and be talking about the FY26 budget. So I don't know how Ms. Perkins keeps this straight in her head. We will have some preliminary numbers for the FY26 at the second meeting in October. And just to let the public know, because I know some of you are watching out there, November is really going to be our time to really dig into the budget itself. We'll have a public hearing in early December and vote on the final budget and town meeting articles by mid-December. We do have some additional meetings in our calendar this year for November and December if we need them, so we'll see how much. I know you two are going to be working on the budget and thinking about kind of some of our anticipated pressure points, what are our guidelines that we're operating under, not looking to use free cash, the operating budget, that sort of thing. I did want to note that we're trying to get the MASC to come in and present their workshop on the budget in Chapter 70. I spoke with the representative today. Unfortunately, their October availability is all gone, or it doesn't match up with our availability. So if you could send me your November availability, I will try to schedule that tomorrow and get back to them. Anything else to note on the budget? It's going to be a lot more budgets. Yes.
Yeah, just, Ms. Perkins sent out the information yesterday to all the principals and administrators in terms of the process of any of the expense lines. We've established roughly a 2% increase in those expense lines, and we'll go from there. Those, as you know, those were cut pretty drastically this year. So cutting further in those lines is going to be pretty difficult. And most of it at 2% is actually, to be quite honest, is going to be anything that's a cost of doing business more than anything else. But we'll do our best to get to a number with the working group and then with the full committee.
Could I just ask, would it be possible to forward that to me and Armando, just to have as like context for the budget process? I just think it would be helpful for me to understand how it's been rolled out to principals as we get into the whole thing. And just, yeah, thank you.
Anything else? All right, moving on to unfinished business. The first is the redistricting of all K through 5 elementary schools. Again, I just want to keep repeating this. Due to increases in enrollment from both residents and the population sheltered at the 2 hotels, redistricting will be happening for all K through 5 elementary schools in Stoughton. Redistricting means redrawing the boundary lines for who goes to which elementary school. And we're redistricting regardless of the final decision for the South Elementary School building. That brings us to the discussion for the redistricting committee. Dr. Baeta.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. You received a memo from me on the 10th that I'm resharing with you. The committee would begin on or around the 24th of October as a kind of get-together meeting, get to see who's on there, which means that for some of these positions, Madam Chair, I defer to you, but the school committee has pretty much in general accepted nominations from the public, and then the chair has made recommendations to place folks. The 5 elementary principals will be involved. I've asked Ms. Miller, principal of Stoughton High School, to be my designee. I think having a high school principal is good practice, and as well as keeps a lot of the emotions out of it, because it is a process that requires a lot of looking at data. In my review of working committees, you're going to have a working overall committee that represents the community, and then you have a subcommittee that will be looking at things like the heat maps and all of that before it goes to the full committee. So one parent from each of the K to 5 schools. You may want to consider a preschool parent as well. And then the director of facilities and grounds becomes important. The director of special education or their designee, and 2 school committee members. The other thing to add on here would be that I, to be quite honest, have somewhat missed, and I shouldn't, is staff. And that would be our teachers. And I would say that at minimum, you probably need 1 from each of those buildings if you're going with 1 parent from each of those buildings.
Could I ask a question for Mr. Ford? Were you here for the previous redistricting process, or at the end? Can you give us a little history of what happened the last
I
time?
was not part of that
Okay.
process.
Okay.
So I don't actually, I think that was predated me by a number of years.
Okay, that's what I was just like, I don't think you go back that far.
Yeah, the last redistricting in Stoughton was not a significant redistricting.
Right.
It was based upon some crunches that happened in the district, and there were some shifts, but it did not impact, whole streets per se. So
Okay.
it's been quite a while, and I can reach out to look at the minutes from what happened then, so you can have it as a point of reference. Prior to that, then you had the middle school move, when we moved from K-6 schools to 6 to 8, and that was just before my time on the school committee. And that was a big shift because we went to K to 5 schools. So besides, those have been the two major that I remember from history, but I'm happy to have Kathy dig into some of our minutes of the school committee from the 90s and the early 2000s, prior to when you started that way. we don't have to look at that time period.
Yeah, another question?
Yes, can we include the town as far as traffic and also the voting booths? Because we vote in specific precinct and,
Yeah, so that would, so everything to do with the voting and everything else would be secondary to this, because that doesn't necessarily mean, for example, my street where I live on, my side of the street, I'm at the Hanson for voting, across the street is at the Gibbons for voting. So that would be a secondary move, that once we've finished our work, then we would turn that over to the town. They don't necessarily have to line up to where your child goes to school.
okay. Traffic?
And traffic would be probably ex officio with somebody like Mark Tisdale. I would reach out to him. So that'd be more of an ex officio position, because we would probably either, depending on how massive of a change it is, you may have to find compensation for a traffic study. That can happen, and has happened in certain areas of certain communities that have done redistricting, because it's caused other issues.
Yeah, I've noticed that middle school, the traffic is massive these days, much worse than last year. I've actually witnessed parents coming out of their vehicle to argue with other parents
Yeah,
walking.
well,
by.
we've had that, and we've had parents arguing with students and vice versa, so I don't know how many more people we can put out there, right? It's one of these situations where, I mean, the next thing to do is to ask the chief to put a detail out there and pay for the detail. And that's costly, as you probably know. It's just one of those situations where there's very little level of patience and just recognize, I mean, people start parking out there an hour and a half before school gets out. You know, it's just too much. So, you know, we're going to look at traffic patterns. Dennis was down there. I spoke to him last week after I think I got an email from you about looking at the traffic patterns. Matt went down there as the former principal to take a look at it, and it's the same general pattern. It's just, we just need some patience,
Yeah.
you know. And please, don't get out of cars and start arguments, because that always leads to a bad situation, especially with kids.
Yes.
So I would add the staff members to this as well.
Okay.
Pretty comprehensive
Yeah.
committee.
Do we need, would it be worthwhile reaching out, because it will affect other staff as well, paraprofessional, administrative assistant, custodian, you know, is it worth having one of them, like, or at least?
So what I would do is, because you got to be careful about how big this committee's going to
Right,
get,
right.
what I would do is, once you have a report with options, I would make sure that you have a set aside of special meetings just for the purposes of input from X, Y, and Z. Eventually, the STA is going to come here and want to discuss the redistricting and what it means to their membership.
Right.
That's just a given.
Okay.
That said, this is also dependent on, what are we really talking about? Are we talking about a new school, or are we talking about modulars and closing down a school? So it's going to lead to different impacts. If you're a student at the South and you're moving to a modular classroom at the X, you might have a real opinion about that compared to going into a new school. It looks different. The new school is, I was going to go there to the new school, now you're sending me to another part of town, although it's nearby. The fact is, that's going to send some reverberation throughout the district.
If one of those special meetings could be with students, that would be, I think,
Yeah,
a good one, too.
so students, student impact, family impact, community impact, employee impact with different grades of what that means, custodial, administrative assistants, paraprofessionals, teachers, administrators, and all of that. Those have traditionally been like multiple school committee meetings, take public comment, receive information, potential grievances could come. I mean, there's so many different avenues that this could come from, and that's the reason why it's important for the school committee to have as many hands in it, but at the same time, not making any determination until you've had all of those public. You're probably going to go through, well, the two that I observed that are most recent in Massachusetts was easily 6 to 8 weeks of public hearings before there was like 2 meetings of school committee discussion and asking for more information. That period itself was a 6-month period. So the work leading up to it is difficult. It's then the decision of where do you cut, where you're going to go and not go. we'll know a little bit of that by April.
Right.
Because if we're moving forward on a new project, this discussion looks totally different. If not, it's going to be streamlined, but at the same time, the impact is we have questions such as, is it still a debt exclusion? Is it just borrowing? Is it temporary? Is it permanent? All those questions that I said, all of those need to be part of your decision as a school committee, but then needs a potential ballot question or a significant amount of borrowing that maybe we can't do as a town, or maybe it's borrowing that looks like the fire station, debt exclusion and regular borrowing. All of those.
That's for the modules.
Right. All of that goes away if we get a ballot question and it goes through. All you're then looking at is the true redistricting of going down to one larger elementary school, and then all the other things that lead up to the Jones, to the Wilkins, and all of that stuff. It's a whole different ballgame. So the work of the committee until April is really just a lot of info gathering, best practices, seeing what other communities have done or not done. Then we'll be asking probably at least an article for a third-party assistance, because you can't do it without it. You need to bring in the companies that do this in terms of where are the bodies, where they're going to be in 2 years when you make this change, or 3 years, or 4 years. And you have to look at the churn, which is a very important number for us, and all of that stuff. But I think it's better to start sooner than later with just starting the talk and getting people to gather the information, reaching out to those folks. This committee will be broken up into multiple subcommittees at some point.
And for the, probably a little bit too soon, but for the plans that the town has, making buildings a little bit taller in the center of town and more apartments and so on, will they be able to get an opportunity to give us that data, or give the committee that data to take, or the consultant that data, so we don't end up doing this twice?
Yeah, so one of the things we'll do is, our data, as you know, last year we started the NESDEC organization doing our enrollment projections. We'll be in year 2 this year, after October 1st, of gathering those projections. Those projections do look at licenses that are pulled, or permits that are pulled for buildings, and for what type of buildings, multipurpose, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, condos, all of that stuff. That's part of the gathering of data, and then you're projecting that out. And then you're using your history of that projection to then make a determination on how many kids can go to this school or that school. You're more than likely, if I can, say this, you're more than likely moving one school to 2 different sites and maintaining the Wilkins as it is. More than likely. Because you can't just move 700 students into 2 buildings. Moving 300 of them is going to be difficult.
Yeah. I guess getting that data, the permitting data.
Yep.
Is something that probably should be done right up front.
Yeah, so when this year's data comes out for the December enrollment data that we do after October 1st, we'll be able to take a look at how many permits were pulled last year when we did this, and how many permits have been pulled since then. And those companies then come in and will use 3, 4, 5 years of history to say, oh my goodness, you guys are still building as a town, versus, looks like you've slowed down your building, so now it becomes the turnover. And for Stoughton, that's going to be the hardest. That'll be the hardest number, because our churn number is what, 12, 13%?
Almost 12%.
Almost 12%.
Thank you. Moving back to the committee itself, a couple of questions. I do want to say I think Ms. Miller is a great designee, not only as the high school principal, but as a Stoughton, someone who came through the district as a student and as a teacher and as an administrator, and has, has some experience with having the students mixed from the different schools. So I do appreciate her background for this. A question about how the parents and guardians are going to be selected. What was the process for that?
We could utilize anything that you'd like. We can send out a single notice that there is a redistricting committee, and that redistricting committee is, that the chair of the committee on behalf of the school committee is accepting, parents from our current 6 schools, and that, the early on, these meetings will be approximately once a month, but then eventually, at some point, they'll probably go to biweekly, depending on the crunch of what needs to be done and when. And we've stated that the first meeting we're trying to start this on is on the 24th, so if they can make that first meeting, that would be great, and then we're trying to stick to some type of a Thursday evening calendar as much as possible. And the reason for that is flexibility, because we also have building committee, we're going to have budgets, and so on and so forth, so we're trying to work, and one of the reasons why I made myself designee. So it's really up to you folks. Again, through Jeff, on behalf of the school committee, there's a release. Internally, I would put out something to the staff, probably looking at 6 folks. And again, it'll look very big on day one, and then it's going to spread into different areas of responsibilities. And I'll give you one, for example, transportation. Got to look at transportation. That'll be on there.
Lindsay, yes.
I think we, for the wellness committee, had principals nominate folks,
Oh,
right?
yes,
Do you
yeah.
want to take an approach like that, have folks submit their interests to the building principal, and then they can share
Sure.
names with us?
Right. That one, we tried to get like a cross-section. I almost wonder if it, I think some criteria for, are we going to have people submit a couple sentences of their interest, or do we just pick out of a hat?
So one of the things that's important is within the timetable, you're really looking at a lot of K-1
Right,
families.
families.
Maybe some 2s, because there could be a switch by grade 5, but more than likely,
It's going to be, right.
K-1, maybe some 2s is your concentration, because that's going to be the parents that are mostly impacted in
Right.
terms of potential movement, versus a parent in grade 5, they're already going to be out of this.
Right.
So that's the other thing, is I'm saying K-5, but maybe we're concentrating on informing them that, it does have. Now, the other part of it is that you can have some parents who understand the schools and so on and so forth, and won't have anything to lose in it, so therefore they bring another perspective as well.
Right. And yes, I think the one benefit of the principal nomination is we did try to find some cross-section. It's going to be very difficult, but have some very, try to represent some of our different populations, because that will be really important for us to understand, and to also make sure that we don't look like we're targeting one area for, for redistricting because of economic issues or racial issues, so.
And that's gonna be one of the outcomes of the study. is
Right.
that once you get some numbers, then you gotta go backwards, and you gotta look at demographics.
Right.
And you gotta look at, all of that stuff, because you don't want an OCR visit because you've created something that doesn't necessarily meet.
Right.
A balance, if you will, and that's gonna be hard as well. I love the idea of asking the principals. I can sit
Yeah.
with them, put together a 4 or 5 question survey.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And say to them that here's the commitment time of the committee. Some of this can be easily done virtually. It doesn't have to be, it can be hybrid. I mean, we might as well use that if we
Right.
have parents who want to be involved. So I'm happy to do that and bring it back to the next meeting.
I like that. I like having the principal's nomination, and work with them to identify parents who are getting involved. And the principals know, there's always a parent who's like, I'd really like to get more involved. And we saw that with the wellness committee, is some parents are like, I don't even know what this committee is, I just want to be involved in the schools. So I love having.
Well, that's why the preschool became something that I originally missed, and my original memo went back and added, because if you're a parent of a 3-year-old, you have a direct impact.
Right.
And so they could be, on this, we could also look at community members. Again, the
Right.
committee's gonna look large, but it's gonna end up becoming dwindled down, and people are gonna be concentrating in different areas of what it really means, because it's so encompassing, and it's so different. This is the difference here is, you not only have a question, a ballot question, but then added to that, you have this potential of modularism, you have this, so everything's gonna be very calendar-based, right? We have to get articles done by December, we gotta get specials done by the date, we gotta get Everything's gotta be lined up according to, so you're working easily a year ahead of time. So you can meet those deadlines and people don't feel, quote, it's rushed.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, I think that runway of like having the information long before a decision's made, I think like what we did when we made the vote to consolidate and extended it over the summer because we wanted to make sure we had more time to hear from folks, like I wanna really make sure that that's part of this and making sure we're getting community input throughout, which I think,
Yeah.
you know, this
And one of the reasons why we made this a committee and not a working group is because we will post agendas
Yeah.
and minutes and all of that stuff.
yeah,
So
I
it'd be
think,
very, as public as we can make it, and public comment time, and, yeah, it's gonna be a working committee. It's gonna have to be because the politics of education and redistricting are real.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And we've seen them, so, to be real.
We should,
Yeah.
we should probably consider having a line item in every single agenda going forward. Redistricting is just an emotional aspect for so many people.
Right,
So we
exactly.
can say, it's been on the agenda since August.
Yes, no, it's going to be a standing agenda item. And if you notice, we specifically noted redistricting of all K through 5 elementary schools so that people who look back at the agendas note that it was redistricting of all schools, because it will affect, whatever we do will affect all schools in some ways, so.
And it's not considered redistricting for the preschool because we have one place.
Right,
We're just moving it,
Yeah.
like we've done before.
all right.
And is it
Right.
an idea to just let the public know this is time to occur, everyone in Stoughton, because
Yeah,
everyone.
we'll do what we'll do is I'll get a press release that's general out, and it's one that's specific to the principals, where we can come up with a list of, you know, of what is the criteria, if you will, and then be able to provide that to you, hopefully by the October meeting. If not this meeting, we just move the calendar back and don't start the 24th, that's fine. There's not a rush to start on the 24th. I just wanted to get at least 1 or 2 meetings before the Christmas season came. That was my only intent.
I think my other thinking here too is just knowing that this is going to be a large part, I think, of folks' decision-making for April, would want to make sure that they are as informed as possible.
Yep.
I'm wondering, I know, you know, we've got 6 months, right, from October to April. And you'd said leading up to April will likely be like information gathering, but I'm wondering how we can build up some structures around just like being as transparent as possible about that information gathering so that the public is really looped in like every step of the way.
Yeah, so the goal would be that we would do what we have with the building committee, which is to create a page called redistricting. The last one I looked at, that's exactly what they did. And from there, have that information and then continuously send people there. Probably utilize further communication with the select board and finance committee and on a regular basis, because there will be a financial impact one way or the other.
And one last thing.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. This is like recruiting, and in my opinion, if we get an overabundance of volunteers, is it possible to, perhaps, do we have other committees, maybe we can channel them to if they just didn't fit this one?
Well, if we're going to have special meetings, once we get the reports, maybe we keep some of these names and have them be, like, if you didn't make the main committee, we will come out with the reports and maybe we'll have a larger parent group to
Yeah.
give feedback as we give it to, and present to employees.
Yeah, because people willing to volunteer, we should
Right,
allow
definitely,
them.
yes.
It's not in this area, in other areas.
Definitely. Do we need to vote on the actual committee itself at this point?
Nope,
Okay.
not at this
Okay.
time. Nope, it's information, we'll continue to work on it, add the staffing issue here, add the process here. I'll reach out to the principal sooner than later. ELL probably needs to be in here in some way, shape, or form. Or we need to make sure that within special education, if there isn't a designee through Ed's office and/or Dr. Quayle's office, that we make sure that our parent group is inclusive of that.
Right.
So we can make that work any way that you fit, and we can do that as part of your next meeting.
All right, anything else on that?
No.
The next issue is South Elementary School building needs update. Modular classrooms, we already touched on. As a reminder, this is a result of the June special election, the failed new elementary school vote. And we've already talked about due to capacity, issues are likely going to divide the population of the South School either permanently or temporarily among multiple buildings like the Don, the Gibbons. Dr. Bayetta mentioned in the superintendent update that about site visits, considering temporary versus permanent, lease or purchase. Again, we've already noted, but it's worth repeating that this process will involve us going to town meeting as early as this coming May 2025. This will involve money for the site work and the modular classrooms themselves. These are not eligible for MSBA or other grants, so that's worth keeping in mind. This will be taxpayer funded, and these expenses are far beyond what we could put in our operating budget. If we don't get funding for the modular classrooms or the new elementary school project, we are looking at some real serious issues. So unfortunately, there just isn't a zero cost or no cost option to fixing the South School. Any questions about modulars, more comments?
Not right
All
now.
right, again, so this is going to be a standing agenda item as we decide what to do, or as we approach April. I do want to mention that the Elementary School Building Committee, we're moving forward with the results of the vote, but we're still working with the Elementary School Building Committee, which is pursuing the revote of the proposed new consolidated elementary school building at the April local elections. The next step is for the special town meeting in November. The hope is to have a show of support to put pressure on the select board, because the select board still needs to approve putting this on the ballot in April. And then obviously the voters need to vote for it this time around. The school building committee met on Wednesday, September 11th. Just some housekeeping notes. Dennis Rigos took over Joyce Husini's place. She looks very relaxed in retirement, by the way. And then Leo Fay, who was a respected member of the Stoughton High School Building Committee, and Patricia Yanikowski, a former school committee member and a grandparent of Stoughton Public School students, were appointed to round out the committee. Some interesting points. I think most of this makes sense to us, or we know this already, but it's worth making. Questions of that we're getting our why stick with this project. I mean, it is MSBA approved. The funding would still be there if it passes the April election. $47 million in grants. Really importantly, it addresses multiple buildings and issues within the district, and that's huge. The new consolidated building would allow us to address South and all of its deficiencies: space, accessibility, special education, 21st century education, security, we've talked about that, health and safety, privacy, all of that. It would allow us to extend the life of the Wilkins by pursuing that HVAC grant. It would allow us to address issues with the Jones. We would relocate the preschool from the Jones to the Wilkins. We could reuse the Jones or even close it. And then it would allow us to address the OMS, because we would not have all these major capital issues for the elementary school buildings. We, of course, have the enrollment issues, and there will be some long-term value for the town. The cost of utilities and maintenance would be decreased by having this new building and not having to heat and maintain that old South building, possibly at the Jones as well. It was noted that the extension to revote being extended to April is extraordinary. This just has not happened. That is very much thanks to the advocacy of the building committee members. Within the past 5 years, most of the districts who had that failed vote had to withdraw from the project. So this is a huge opportunity and really unprecedented. We've been asked why we can't just defer that, and the MSBA does not do deferrals. But a really important point to note is that the submission if we were to withdraw and resubmit this project, the submission deadline for the statement of interest is, I believe, March 1st, around then.
Yeah, right around there.
But then, so with this April vote, if that fails, we'll miss the deadline for resubmitting. So the soonest we could resubmit the South School project would be 2026. The soonest it could be accepted would be 2027. However, they're the politics of having, if we had failed 2 failed votes, the MSBA would likely not jump at the opportunity to work with us. And the project team says it can take 5 to 8 years to get reconsidered for that. So the soonest would be 2027. The soonest a feasibility study could be completed would be 2028. The town would have to pay for that in full this time around. There would be no reimbursement for submitting the same project twice, although we could use a lot of the same materials. And the soonest that building would be built would be 2032. So resubmitting slows us way down, and the successful revote means the building would open, as we discussed yesterday, winter 2028, 2029. So waiting until 2032 is best case scenario, really, I mean, thinking about extending that South School building that far, it really just cannot last another 8-10 years. People, the working group, Dr. Breyer and I presented at the other day, people were asked, why can't we wait until the Stoughton High School borrowing is paid in full? That's not till 2038. And the MSBA doesn't let you pick and choose what date your project is approved. So we can't ask them specifically to approve in 2038. If for some reason it all aligned and we got approved in 2038 for that, we're looking at 2043 for a new building. So, like, the revote itself pushes things out another year and a half. But in having to go through this process again, we're looking at many, many years down the road. So just really sobering, like the timelines and the extent of
The
that.
South will be almost 100 years old at that point.
Exactly, the South will be almost 100 years old. We're looking at another 8, 10, 20 years out of that building, which I know South School parents are throwing things at the screen right now hearing that. So just something to think about. It's not as easy as like, well, we'll just ask the MSBA to like, let us do this in another year. It doesn't happen like that. The project is going to be fundamentally unchanged when it goes to the revote, so we have to gain public support for the design and cost basically as is. One thing that has not happened is that survey of town voters, yes, no, didn't vote, until we really understand all the intricacies of the no vote. There are some valid reasons, like if cost is a main issue, how are we going to overcome that with people? We did not do a great job of getting information out for those on fixed income. Chris asked about public outreach. There was a call to redesign a Q&A sheet for people to give out information, the website. Jeff Pickett did put on the submission, what was it called, the preferred schematic report?
Yep.
Yeah, the full preferred schematic report is up on the website, so if you would like to read 500 pages on a building project, it's all there. I actually did refer to it, so it is helpful if you're looking at data. But we did go to members of the building committee went to back to school nights. We had tables with information. Dr. Beta was at several. I was at one as well. We had a lot of positive interactions with people. Most people were in support. A lot of people thought it had already passed, and there were a lot of people who had no idea. So I think that speaks to the level of information and what the information hurdles that we need to get over. They will be at the Stoughton Day. There's going to be attempts to reach other school events. We need to get that roadshow out. And there was a call for, and I'll try to keep you updated on this, consistent, concise, clear answers that we can give to some of the common questions, like what is the cost of the no vote? What are the benefits to the other schools? How much of the town will be affected? What's going on with the Wilkins School? What happens to the South Building, Jones, that sort of thing? Why not the middle school first? If we could have little snippets, sound bites that we can all repeat and that are, make clear and concise, that would be very helpful. The next scheduled school building committee meeting is Wednesday, October 9th. So that's kind of where things stand with that. Any questions on the building committee? Yes, Armando.
I'd like to see, it seems that the building subcommittee is falling off social media, like Facebook, and really like to see a bigger presence there. And I guess someone has to write something and then it
Right.
comes out, and I don't think anyone's done that. What I'd love actually to see, maybe at least once a week, take one of these frequently asked questions, ask the question, provide the answer, shoot it out on social media. Next week, the same thing. If there's nothing update, they're always asking you the same question over and over again. Let's put
Right.
in social media, go to every single one of those questions, put out the question, you see it on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and the answer is put out at least once a week. So we can say it's on social media every single week at minimum.
So a couple different things. When you look at any election, you go through this time period of withdrawal and lack of participation, which I think is where we're at. right? And we're probably going to see that through the presidential election and the holidays. And then January will come and the spike will start, right? And I think that spike needs to be out there sooner than later.
Yeah.
If in fact, there is a citizen's petition for an article for, I believe, this coming up town meeting for the purposes of a ballot question. There, with, I believe, over 1,000 signatures. There is that part, and if that takes place, which it needs to, then the next phase would be, does it get put into the ballot for the April vote, which is also a townwide vote? Then what does that mean in terms of the prior scare tactics that have been used with elected officials, including yourselves? And then what does that mean in terms of, the ability for folks that I spoke to and been speaking to, which is that disappointment, but didn't vote. Disappointment and thought it went through. Disappointment, couldn't believe that something in Stoughton for schools wasn't done. And the stewing that I do is one, just be mindful of the chair's comments and timeline that she just noted. If we think this cost is too much today, then folks, I'm a town resident. I'm going to be doing exactly what we've been doing for a fire station that should have been built in the 1980s when I was a kid and didn't even have the right to vote. And now we paid, and I was on the, quote, committee that was supposed to be a public safety committee. And when you looked at the numbers that I served on for a public safety committee and building a fire station, which, but for the record, I supported, the numbers are almost equal, and anybody who tells you different didn't look at the numbers. Building schools with 250 kids is not the future. It's unsustainable. And the message we got to get out there is we are trying to consolidate and bring something into the 21st century, which by the time this gets built could be well into a quarter of a century in, if not later, right? Or actually later. But I think the most important part is it is expensive, but how do you leave 42 cents on the dollar on reimbursable money? Right? I mean, there's no one in here. This morning I thought I had to go buy a new washer because my washer wasn't taking a full turn. And the first thing I said to myself was, oh, I hope there's a sale. And there was. I went online and there was a washer and dryer for 37% off. I said, wow, if it is broken, it's time for me to go buy a washer. That's where we're at. And I know it's expensive. I'm not suggesting it's not. But at the same time, we cannot continue to kick this down the road. We just can't. The cost will be uncontrollable. And that's what we've done, unfortunately, as a community. And I think the forefathers on all parts of the community are trying to do the right thing, and this is the time to do it. It's time to do the right thing, to be quite honest, for the taxpayers. Do it now so it doesn't cost us more later. That's the society we're in. So I've already said too much because you all know where I stand on this as a supporter, not only as the superintendent, but as a taxpayer.
You need to say that every meeting.
We could do
Those
a
become my
rant from the
norms.
yes.
My norms are to tell you that I support the bill.
We can have a rant from the chair and the superintendent about the building.
Yes, I apologize. Thank you.
I just want to say I appreciate, as always, all of the work that the building committee puts into. It's just such a thorough plan. Every stone has been turned over. Like every option has been explored. I really think the work of the committee has been so thorough, and I appreciate just continuing to share that work out with the public. I think what you said, Catherine, about having these like digestible chunks, because as much as I love a multi-100-page document, not everybody does or has time for that or has like, bandwidth to be able to dig into that. So I think those like super digestible pieces of information that get at these like frequently asked questions are going to be super important. Just like making sure we're getting that out there, which I know the building committee is prioritizing, but.
I would love to piggyback on that if it's okay with you. Please go to stoughtonschools.org and make your own educational decision about your best interest, period. It's all there. Every piece of information, every meeting, every agenda, it's all there. And now make your own decision. Don't make it on social media. Don't base it on who knocked on your door. Make it on your own decision that this is in the best interest of Stoughton.
Very good.
And on that note, let's move on to other matters. At this time, I would like to defer amendments for the September 10th, 2024 minutes. Any amendments?
I don't have any amendments, but I do want to state something for the record. The minutes as written do accurately capture what was said during public comment, but I do just want to note, with all due respect to the speaker during public comment, their comments were not quite an accurate representation of the motion I actually made at the August 27th meeting. So just wanted to state for the record that my motion on August 27th was not to freeze salaries, but was rather to freeze permanent administrative hiring. Just wanted to make sure that distinction is really clear, and I know it's not something we can amend in the minutes because the minutes, again, accurately capture what was said, but just wanted that to be noted in this meeting's minutes.
Thank you. Armando, if you don't have any amendments, I don't have any amendments either.
No.
So at this point, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes as written.
So moved.
All right, that motion was made by Lindsay. Second?
Second?
Seconded by Armando. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's carried 3-0, so the minutes are approved as written. And correspondence, moving on to that. The Climate Action Plan Committee has sent their interim recommendations. They presented this to the Select Board and wanted us to see it, as there are a couple of things that do pertain to schools, mainly number 7, that they were looking at. So I'm forwarding it to that if we would like to have them in, or if we'd like to discuss this further. I'm open to that, but I have been asked to share this, and I think it is good to see what is being done for that. I have one other email that Dr. Beta and I have already kind of discussed this and answered it, but we did get an email asking about commemoration for 9/11 at the schools, particularly the high school. Dr. Beta.
Thank you so much for that. Working with Mr. Ford, our comprehensive plan that we have, which includes things like Constitutional Day, will now include that all schools will be having some type of age-appropriate educational presentation, if you will, on 9/11 when it falls, whenever, regardless of when it falls, but the 9/11 is going to be recognized formally.
Thank you. I hope that answers the question for the citizens for that. Any other matters to move forward? I have 2 short ones. You have the MASC resolutions in your packet. They're not on the committee, or not, excuse me, not on the agenda for this time, but we'll put them on next time. We do need to appoint our designee to vote yes or no on these. So we'll do that on the next meeting. And I did want to note the Frederick Richards celebration for Stoughton is on Sunday, October 6th from 12 to 1 at the high school. Doors open at 11. Get there early because this will be a popular event. It is free to attend. Anything else to add? Nope. All right. Our next regular meeting is Tuesday, October 8th at, here in the conference room at the district offices. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Made by Lindsay. Second.
Second?
Seconded by Armando. It's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's carried 3-0. Motion is adjourned at 8:26. Thank you all for coming, and good night.